loan number one's still on it. So here's what happens in the lawsuit. They file a complaint, and they file something else we talked about. No, skip one step. Listen. In addition, bank hears about. Now, let's skip that step. Bless you. Understand this. If the bank forecloses and has the property sold, I want to explain the situation with these two easements here for a minute. Because this easement was in the warranty deed, okay, reserved by the seller in the warranty deed before the mortgage, the bank can't wipe out that easement. Seller, when the bank gets the property back, seller will still have his easement rights here, okay? Buddy didn't record. Buddy's going to get wiped out by the foreclosure. If bank found out about Buddy, they would name him as a defendant and say, we hear this guy Buddy's got an easement claim, but he didn't record, so we're in front of them. We're in front of Buddy, so wipe out Buddy too. Bank doesn't even have to name Buddy to wipe him out. Buddy didn't record. But if the bank found out about Buddy, they could name Buddy too. The point is, I was trying to make here is, if Buddy had gone on and recorded, bank couldn't wipe him out either. He would be in front of him. Buddy chose not to record. Buddy is junior to everybody. Hell, he's junior IRS because he didn't record. Yeah. So he's going to get wiped out too. The concept being, at this point in time, as of 2011 and the bank's claim, anybody after that, when the default starts in 2014 or 2018 or whenever the bank occurs, their priority is established here based on when they record it, and they're going to wipe out everybody after. And everybody in front of them, they can't wipe out. They cannot wipe out the bank, number one. They cannot wipe out seller's recorded easement that took place in the deed, which was recorded before their mortgage was. They can wipe out Buddy because he never recorded at all. Now,
so what do you mean by wipe out Buddy?
What I mean is his claim, he no longer has an easement. His easement is poofed.
The easement exists because it was part of what was.
What I'm saying to you is Buddy no longer has the right to use these.
Right. It exists, but Buddy can't.
Buddy doesn't get to use it. Okay. Seller gets to use it for the benefit of his property back here because seller had a recorded claim. Buddy, when Buddy comes to whoever buys it at the foreclosure sale we're going to talk about, says, I get to use easement too. They said, no, you don't.
Okay.
You didn't have a recorded claim. We got our claim as of 2011. You didn't have a recorded claim. So here's what so you may or may not name Buddy, but Buddy's going down the tube here. Okay, now, the bank files a complaint, that creates a lawsuit, and they file one more document as a part of filing a lawsuit that we've talked about before. They file a notice of lis pendens. And what do we say that was? That was a notice of lawsuit pending. They file that in the deed records, so that anybody who examines the title 2014, anybody who does a title examination in 2014 and looks at the history of the title of this property, they say, wow, there's a notice of lis pendens here in the public records in 2014. That says there's a foreclosure going on. I better not buy this thing. Because what a notice of lis pendens does is it says you are notified that a lawsuit is pending and the title to the property is subject to the outcome of this lawsuit. And it really is. Title of the property is going to be very much subject to the lawsuit. Unless it gets paid off. Then it all goes away. Okay, now, they file all this. They file a lawsuit. They serve summonses on each of the parties. They each file their answers. Everybody goes through all their discovery and all their baloney crud, and then they get down to a final judgment. And at the end of maybe 8 months minimum, maybe they're going to get to a final order of the judge. judge is going to enter a final order, final judgment. It's going to be a final judgment of what? Foreclosure. Foreclosure. Final judgment of foreclosure. Now, the judge is going to say, I declare that bank has a valid lien against the property. I declare that judgment creditor's lien is junior. I declare that IRS is junior. Their liens are going to be wiped out. In addition, I declare that buyer-borrower owes bank number 2 $185,000 plus court costs and attorney's fees and late interest and And the grand total of everything that started out as $200,000 paid down to $185 is now $230,000. And the court is going to say, I hereby order Mr. Buyer-Borrower to pay $230,000. And if he doesn't, on such and such a date of 2000, we're going to be 15 now for sure, of 2015, we're going to have an auction. We're going to sell this property. Yes?
You said that the property's worth $1 million right at the beginning,
It was?
and then the judgment's for $230,000.
Yep.
And it said the property goes for foreclosure auction. Let's say if it's sold for $500,000.
Okay.
Who gets the extra money? Does it go to pay off the IRS and the judgment, or are those already gone?
Here's what will happen.
You understand what I'm asking?
That's an interesting concept. They have, all right, they have the right in the lawsuit, and they will if your factual scenario works.
Okay.
But normally it doesn't.
Yeah.
Normally, this property,
Is not
if
worth
it was worth $2 million, hell, he'd go out and refinance this thing or something.
Yeah.
You know, he would protect his equity. Normally, at this point, I'm going to set the property, normally the property is going to be worth, in this, maybe, let's say it's worth $800,000. So that it's nice and tight. Is there any equity? Isn't there? There's a $500,000 first. This thing's at $230,000. Maybe there's a little equity left. All right. Here's what these guys have the right to do in the foreclosure case. They have the right to say, Your Honor, we agree with bank number 2. We're junior to them. When you have this sale, if there's any money left over, I get to be third. I get some of it. It ain't going back to this case.
And then basically, if anyone
And the IRS gets to say, okay, after they're paid, give me the rest. Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I mean,
Okay.
sometimes they bother. Here's what I'm saying. In order to establish those rights, these guys had to hire a lawyer, had to have him come into the case, had to have him file pleadings to try to establish that their lien is valid too, but they're number 3. Their lien is valid too, we're number 4, Your Honor, we'd like to participate in the proceeds. Okay. And then they'll be in there lobbying to get a paragraph in the judgment for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if they don't, if it's worth $800,000, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
They skip it. So the judge says, let's have an auction on such and such a date. Let's have an auction on such and such a date, and let's sell the property. To pay debt number 2 only, and maybe to pay 3 and 4 if they came in to participate. Okay. Now, by law, it says if there's a bunch of money left over at the auction, and if they didn't come in to participate, theoretically, it goes back to the borrower. But there isn't ever. Okay. This is not a great sale, by the way. This is not where the sale we're going to have here doesn't exactly bring peak value. This is not like listing with Sotheby's and getting a high price either. You know, I'm saying foreclosure sales don't bring good value. Yes, sir.
Oh, no, I know that.
I know you do, but what I'm getting at is there's not going to be any money left. That what if that I told you about money left over to go back tomorrow, if there were any equity there, he'd have done something about it. He'd have refinanced. Somebody would have loaned him some more money. Something would have happened. If it was worth $2 million, he'd have been able to go in and borrow another $500,000 to take care of this guy and take care of this guy and take care of this guy. Be cool. Then you'd only have $1 million worth of mortgages on his property, on his $2 million property. So clearly, he wouldn't let this happen to him unless things are going badly and the property ain't worth that much anymore. Yes, I'm sorry.
No, it's, I just had a question about the first bank.
It's
You know,
still getting their payments.
Right, they're still getting their payments, and maybe they don't want this thing to be foreclosed because it doesn't sell for a good amount. Is there any way for them to?
Yeah.
To,
They have
would they do a buyout?
They have a clause in their mortgage that says two things. They have a clause, number one, that says you may not get a second mortgage without our consent. The last thing on that page, when I was going with you saying they pledged their fixtures, they pledged their building, they pledged their rents, it also said they pledged their secondary financing rights. What that means is, basically, this guy didn't even have a right to get a second mortgage without the consent of the bank. So that's a default, even though he's making the payments. If they want to, they can blow this whole thing up, and the whole cards are all gonna fall, and they'll foreclose. In addition, they'll have a clause that says, any default in any junior lien or the recordation of any judgment or claim against the title of the property is also a default. So even though they're getting their payments every month because it's his buddy, they can still declare a foreclosure if they want to. They can declare a default and foreclose. And they can crank up. And if they crank up, it's all just like this, except bank number 2 is a defendant now.
I guess, what if they didn't want the property to foreclose? Because again, it's
What
not
if they
gonna
want-
sell if they don't.
Well, that's
want
it.
the
That's
property.
why. They're getting their payments every month. They're sitting there thinking, this is really cool, we're getting our payments. They don't want the property. They don't want to own the property. I say own the property. Stay with me for a minute on that.
Right.
Own the property sounds like what I told you about strict foreclosure, where the bank's gonna get title of the property.
Right.
The philosophy of all this is for the property to be sold and there to be a third-party buyer who writes a check. That's nice in the real world, but that's not what usually happens. And we'll talk about why in a minute. The court says, let's have a sale, an auction on such and such a day. If the guy don't pay his money. So at that auction, which is now online, kind of like eBay, everybody submit your bids up until a deadline, see who's the highest, we get a bidder. Now, if this guy, the bank, who's foreclosing for $230,000, if some guy bids $100,000 at the auction, okay? Let's call this Mr. Auction Buyer. All right, Mr. Auction Buyer says, I'll pay 100. Now, even if it's worth 800, he sure as hell's not gonna pay 800 because there's still a $500,000 mortgage on it. So at best, there's $300,000 of equity in this property. So Mr. Auction Buyer bids 100. Well, bank number 2 doesn't want this auction to only bring 100,000 and only get 100 for their 230 a day. So bank says, we bid 110. Bank, okay? Now, bank can bid 110 with funny money because the banks do 230. It costs them anything to bid 110. They have 230 of credit coming. So if anybody bids for less than they have coming, they outbid him with credit until somebody gets up to 230. When they drive all this guy all the way up to 230, then they all go out to lunch because they're happy. They're getting 230. They're getting paid. Okay? Yes, sir.
I don't understand that.
Okay. Which part?
What if they stop? What if they end up with the high bid? The bank ends up with the high bid.
Well, we're gonna talk about in a minute. This was the party.
Okay.
Usually, they say 110, and this guy says, okay, fine, keep it. Okay? The bank's gonna get the property. That's what's gonna happen. And that's what usually happens. In your situation and others, usually the bank gets the property back. Probably nobody's gonna bid $230,000 for this property that might be worth $800,000. Because it's got a 500 debt on it. They're bidding if somebody bids 230, they're really bidding 730. For a distressed property, probably things are not real good. They're really bidding 730 because this debt's still on here, right? So a 230 bid is a 730 bid. Not likely to have one, but you could. If somebody bids that, the bank knows they're gonna get paid, then they let these guys keep going. Well, these guys can bid 240, 250, and the bank parties more and more, gets happier and happier, they don't care. But whoever gets the highest bid is going to be the winner of the auction. Okay, we're gonna talk about what happens about being the winner of the auction in a minute. But the point is, whoever bids, let's guess somebody bids 240. Okay, at the auction. All right, he's got until 2 o'clock this afternoon to put that money in the registry of the court. The $240,000 gets paid to the judge who signed this order to the court, to the clerk of the court. And that bidder, whether it's Mr. Auction Bidder or somebody who bid against him, but this will be the successful bidder. He gets what's called a certificate of sale. Now, all that says is, we had an auction today. Mr. Successful Bidder had the highest bid and paid the money into the court, and he gets a certificate of sale. Okay. Remember our statutory right of redemption? The borrower still has 10 days after the issuance of the certificate of sale as a result of the auction to pay everything that was due. Not 240. Everything that was due. Okay? If he does, he saves the property, borrower paid, it's over. This guy gets his money back from the court. Court gives him his 240 back, he goes away. Buyer gives 230 to the bank. They dismiss the lawsuit. Everything's back where it was. Now, these guys' liens aren't wiped out yet. Mr. Buyer is back. He put 230 into the property, but he's still facing these 2 liens. They aren't wiped out yet. So you can't just, otherwise you could have a little friendly foreclosure here, go all the way, pay off your mortgage, everybody gets cleaned up the title of your property. No, they're still on there. Okay, certificate of sale. Maybe, as we said, maybe you went to this guy who paid 240 into the registry of the court. 10 days later, we have a 10-day statutory right of redemption for the buyer to pay it off. And at the end of the 10 days, the court's going to issue a certificate of title to the successful bidder at the auction. The successful bidder at the auction gets title, cleaned of all the junior defendants. And in the situation you asked about, but if the sale went through, and there was 240, 230 went to the bank, 10 went to the judgment creditor, who came in and said, what about me? I get 30.
Okay, and then would they still be on the title, or are they gone now?
No, at the issuance of the certificate of title, they're wiped off the property.
So they got 10,000.
Then they got a $90,000 lien against the guy's other assets.
Okay.
But not this one anymore.
Okay.
All we're doing we're merely clearing liens off of the piece of property that was collateral for this loan.
Okay.
Or this loan. But this guy still owes these things,
Oh, yeah,
whatever, just
that's
get him
the
off the
owners.
piece of property. And the bank doesn't care whether he ever pays them or not.
Yeah.
And they never make another loan to him anyway, they don't care, you know. That's what actually clears the title of the property. And at that point, let's say it was Mr. Successful Bidder, gets a certificate of title. He owns the property. It's got a $500,000 first mortgage on it. It's got an easement on there in favor of seller to the seller's back property, but no easement in favor of Buddy. This is gone, because he kind of paid this off as a part of his auction. And these guys no longer have liens on the property.
Does he get all the same conditions on that first mortgage?
I'm sorry, say again?
Does he get all the same terms and conditions from that first mortgage?
Well,
Or do they have to refi it?
we're going to talk about that later, about what happens if you get down after a mortgage. Theoretically, they're probably going to be pleased to take his payments and happy that he came in and bought the property
Right.
and that somebody's still willing to pay him. Clearly, at this point, at one of these points here, but probably back at this point, Mr. Buyer is going to think things are over and he's going to quit paying this mortgage anyway. And it's all going to go down the tubes. In other words, this guy's going to file. It's rare that all of this happens and you haven't triggered a default here in some cases. Because, but maybe they're so damn glad to have their payments right up until the day of the certificate of title from Mr. Buyer that they'll be happy to take their next month's payment from Mr. Successful Bidder.
But they probably won't, because if the terms, they could change the terms more favorable in the bank.
Yeah.
There's no,
If they
there's
have a
no,
3% loan and rates
Right.
of 10, they're calling.
there's no requirement that they have to maintain the loan that they gave.
Absolutely not. No. And we're going to talk about a clause that allows that.
Right.
The couple of clauses I told you already.
It's not like
They
it's
weren't
signed.
ever allowed to put the second on there so we can trigger a default.
So it's not
They
like
weren't
it's
allowed to
signed.
default. That triggers a default, and that triggers a default in this. But
It's not like an assignment to a lease where you can just say, hey.
we're going to talk about that in a minute. It's like,
Okay, I'll let it go.
maybe, what I'm saying to you is, the real test is going to be exactly what you said it is. If they like the loan and they want to leave the loan in place, they're going to let all this happen. If rates are down to 4, and this is an 8%er, and they're getting paid, they're going to be real happy and shut up. But if the other way around, and they like an excuse to get out of the loan, they got plenty of excuses to get out of the loan, if they want. Yes, sir?
Why isn't the first mortgage here, the 500,000, why isn't that paid first? I mean,
What?
why isn't it paid first? Because
Why is it first?
that's the,
No, he's saying why isn't it paid first in the foreclosure from Bank 2, right?
yeah, because Bank 2 is getting their 235,000.
Yeah, but this guy's getting their payment every month, so he
There's
got,
no default on foreclosure in there.
the
The borrower's still paying that.
borrower's paying
okay.
every month. The borrower's paying his friend every month,
Okay.
keeping them happy.
I just remember that.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, as soon as they quit paying, oh yeah, they're all over it.
Okay.
Then they file a lawsuit that looks just like this one. But bank number 2's a defendant because they're wiping everybody else out. Okay, yeah, oh yeah, all through all this, we've talked about this 4 or 5 different ways already. He is keeping this loan current. And that's why they're not foreclosing. Because of personal, frankly, it's a stupid thing to do. As soon as you're losing the property, it's all going down the tubes. For the 8 months of foreclosures going on, it wouldn't be wasting money making payments on this loan, but it's possible. And I was trying to create a scenario so that you could see that only the people behind you get wiped out in the foreclosure, but not the people in front of you. Realistically, they have plenty of clauses in here that have been violated so that they can foreclose too if they wanted to. But they may be very happy to be having their payments every month because rates out there are now 4% and they have an 8% interest loan and they're thrilled to be getting 8% and thrilled that somebody is paying them every month. Okay, this is a foreclosure proceeding. This is how it all works. And how priorities are established and what you go through in a foreclosure, a complaint. Notice of lis pendens is recorded immediately to tell everybody there's a lawsuit going on. Theoretically, I'm not even going to the reason you record this, but because, as you know, anybody who records after that is already junior to the 2011 bank mortgage, but you record this so that anybody who records independency of your lawsuit, so you don't have to name them and add them as a defendant. Like that. You're telling everybody, Admiral, right now, you better not get on this property because we're going to wipe you out. And these are the only people we have to wipe out are the ones that we see right now when we do our title search. Anybody who's on the property right now. But that's what's going on. A complaint, a notice of lis pendens. You hope to get to a final judgment where the court says have an auction. Winner of an auction gets a certificate of title, certificate of sale. 10-day statutory right of redemption leads to a certificate of title in favor of the bidder who gets title to the property. Yes, sir.
I think you mentioned this before, but I still don't see how it works. Just need some clarity. If the person comes in and bids like 110,000.
So what was 110?
If someone comes in the auction to bid.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And
I wanted to paint the real scenario for you, because this ain't gonna happen. Usually it's the bank, and that's what I was getting at. Let me tell that story first and then see if I answer your question, all right?
Okay.
Because frankly, I want you to realize this is how it happens. The first guy comes along and bids 100,000. Bank doesn't want to let the property go with them only getting 100,000 that he put in the property,
yeah.
trying to satisfy their 230 debt. So the bank bids 110. All right. Usually what happens is there is no other bidder. Okay? Usually that's the end of the bidding. Banks bid 110, nobody else bids. What's going to happen? Certificate of sale will be issued to the bank. Ultimately, certificate of title goes to the bank because nobody outbid the bank. And bank's not going to let anybody outbid them up to 230. They'd rather take the property and sell it themselves. Okay? Maybe. Once it starts getting up around 225, they might start thinking about it, you know? Maybe.
So
But
they
at
have-
100? No.
They have like plenty money to bid because they're not going to actually.
Well, they have 230 to bid before they have to start writing a check.
Yeah.
If they really want the property,
Yeah.
hell, they could bid 300 if the bank wants to. 230 of it is monopoly money.
Yeah.
They could bid another 70 if they want. They could be the successful bidder if they really want this thing. But realistically, at about 225, they're going to quit bidding and take the money. But we're talking about who was the highest bidder at the auction. Bank gets to bid paper money. And this is not fake money. Remember, they really put out this money a while back in. You know, they really did write him a check for 200,000. And they've now had to pay attorney's fees and court costs and late charges and interest and all this stuff, and they haven't been getting their payments. So I mean, it's real money, but it's not money that they have to write into the pot for the auction. They get credit for that. So they can start bidding against whoever bids. They can bid as much as they want to too, but the first 230 is credit. And that's why usually, as I told you, it's unlikely for somebody to bid 240 for a property worth 800 with 500 to debt. Maybe. Weirder things have happened. But more likely somebody's going to bid this thinking I can get this thing for 600 and it's worth 800. But I'm not really interested at much more than that, you know. Now this is some shark trying to bid 100 and get an $800,000 property for 600,000. Good for him if he does. Bank's not going to let him do it because they'd rather take the property and sell it, get the profit themselves. Okay, now, any more questions? That's kind of how it works, and that's how we established the priority was by everybody's recordings. In front of the mortgage being foreclosed, or after the mortgage being foreclosed. And we talked about leases. Leases recorded before, they're on there still. Leases recorded after, the bank didn't like the lease. They could have named them as defendants and wiped them off and said, sheriff, throw them off the property as part of the sale. Mechanics liens, that's another can of worms. But you know, and all through this every year, we got the real estate taxes. bank, the guy may or may not keep paying his real estate taxes. He will, because if he doesn't, this guy will foreclose. But real estate taxes are always here, here, and here, and they're all liens in front of this guy, hell, they're liens in front of this guy. That's why bank escrows monthly to get them paid. So the bank, in those cases, with an escrow, when the bank has an escrow for real estate taxes, it notifies the tax collector, and the bank gets the bill and the bank pays the bill. You just get a kind of a courtesy copy of your tax bill. You don't even get it.
Sometimes you do, if
I'm
they
sorry?
don't calculate it correctly, I will tell you.
Say again?
I said, sometimes you do if they don't calculate it.
If they're
correctly.
short, if the taxes went up, oh yeah,
It's like,
oh yeah, yeah.
What the heck do you?
And a notice from the bank. Usually a notice from the bank of, we just got your tax bill and you're short. Give me some more. You know. Okay. That,
How do they calculate the tax bills? Is it just,
how are real estate taxes
right? Are
bills
they-
calculated?
Right, how does the bank calculate? It's just based on.
Oh,
prior
it's just
year-
whatever, it's whatever last year's bill was.
Got it.
Every year,
Plus or
every
minus.
year the bank readjusts your escrows based on last year's taxes. And as they go up every year, you'll find the 1/12 of your taxes portion goes up a little bit every year. But they're usually a penny or two short every year, you know? Sometimes they'll advance it, sometimes they'll say, give it to me. But that's what they do. And same thing on your insurance premiums. They're always charging you 1/12 of whatever the last bill was that they saw. They don't know what it's going to be next year, in either case, taxes or insurance. That's the best they can do, is charge you 1/12 of whatever last year's were. And then they have, at the end of a year, they have in reserve the amount of last year's bill. If it goes up a little bit, they'll get you. Okay, now, let's try to cover as much of the stuff as we can of these concepts before we break for lunch. The materials talk about all kinds of different mortgages. We're going to fly through a bunch of those real quickly because I want you to know what these terms mean. But of course, we're not going to get in depth as to how any one of those types of loans work. I want you to remember that in every case, no matter how weird or obtuse these things start sounding, there is always a promissory note that reflects the terms of the debt. And there's always a mortgage which creates a lien on the borrower's real estate. So the lender can foreclose on the real estate if the debt is not paid in accordance with the terms of the note. You know, these same documents, in all these cases, we had a note and mortgage, and now we're going to talk about some weirdo kinds of loans, but they all involve a note and a mortgage. The first one is a purchase money mortgage. Now, it means two things. It means, in general, any mortgage given in connection with the purchase of property. What it usually is a mortgage from the buyer back to the seller for a portion of the purchase price. Technically, although we didn't say it, technically, this first mortgage here, at the time of the closing, at the time of the deed, is what we call a third party purchase money mortgage. But that term is not used very often. Yes, sir?
Was that because the person buying the property was putting the $100,000 down?
Yeah, exactly. A portion of the purchase price, exactly. Remember this guy was buying for $1 million?
Yep.
Okay? I said he put $500,000 in the pot, the bank put the other $500,000 in the pot. It's a part of the purchase money. A lot of these terms are going to make sense. It's a portion of the purchase price. But usually, we're talking about a mortgage from the buyer back to the seller. That's 9 times out of 10 what a purchase money mortgage means. It's very possible that under our facts here, that he didn't go to the bank for that first mortgage. He executed a purchase money mortgage back to the seller for that one. So the seller took a note for $500,000 as a portion of the purchase price, which makes it a purchase money mortgage. So the seller is saying, I'll hold the first $500,000 of paper. And buyer, you give me the other $500,000. Same deal to the buyer.
Yeah.
He either owes the money to the seller on the first mortgage, or he owes the money to the bank. Gonna get a better deal from the seller. Not gonna have points and all this other crud. Probably gonna get better terms. But it's a purchase money, usually, but not always, usually it's a first mortgage. But it doesn't have to be, but usually, yes.
Because say when the seller, he's not a bank, when he gives the mortgage out or a note, does the same foreclosure happen when say the buyer defaults on the note?
On which one? To the bank or to the?
To the seller, to the seller.
Okay.
So
All the same.
All the same?
Everything's identical.
Okay.
We just got a different mortgage holder here.
Yeah.
That's all we're talking about. Same. First lien, created in 2011 at the time of the closing, favor the seller.
Okay.
Purchase money mortgage back to the seller. Sometimes it's even a second. Sometimes the seller says, I'll let you get a first mortgage to the bank. I'll take a purchase money second for $200,000.
Okay. So
You know?
300.
But usually it's a first.
Okay.
Okay, a purchase money mortgage is a mortgage for a portion of the purchase price. 9 times out of 10, it's back to the seller. Okay, there's a construction mortgage. We've talked about it. A construction mortgage is dispersed, the proceeds are dispersed in draws. And the proceeds are used to construct or improve a building. All that simply means that we've talked about this, stages of completion, 20% completion, get releases of lien from all the subs, they gave notices to owner, all that stuff. But the point is, a construction mortgage is dispersed in draws as the stages of completion go forward in the improvement that the loan proceeds are being used to construct. Usually, it's on vacant land, but not necessarily. It can be for an addition to a building. Okay, that's a construction loan. There's an open-end mortgage. An open-end mortgage is a mortgage that permits the borrower to borrow additional funds beyond the initial amount. We looked at the first page of the mortgage that we talked about before. Remember I told you that we saw that this mortgage could secure up to $3 million even though it was a $731,000 mortgage? To the additional portion available, if it's available, makes it an open-ended mortgage. All that means is simply the lender has the right to disperse more funds later, loan more funds later to the borrower under the terms of the same mortgage. Open-ended. Later, more money. There are a couple more that we're not going to talk about that were in your materials because they're becoming very rare. There's a wraparound mortgage, there's a package mortgage. I don't think you're ever going to hear those terms anymore. They're both kind of dinosaurs. Now the materials shift to what I think of as things that are more like different payment plans. But the book calls them types of mortgages. There's a fixed rate mortgage. All a fixed rate mortgage means is that the interest rate is fixed for the term of the loan. Sounds like fixed rate, right? Pretty simple. The rate is fixed. Usually, there's a fixed payment of, remember we talked about PITI? Usually there's a fixed payment of principal and interest. And normally, these are your 15, 20, 25, 30-year residential loans. The concept being that the interest rate will remain fixed, and you will have a fixed payment of principal and interest calculated to be sufficient to fully pay off your debt over the term of the loan, whichever it is. Obviously, if it's a 30-year amortization period, the payment's going to be a lot lower than if you got to get rid of it in 15 years. You got a lot bigger payment to get your payment paid off in 15 years. You get your whole loan paid off in 15 years. But whatever it is, it's a fixed interest rate. Fixed. And this is what almost all your residential loans are. Fixed P&I. And remember, and we talked about MTI and taxes and insurance. The fixed P&I is going to stay the same for the whole life of the loan. But every year, when your taxes change, this probably go up a nickel. And your insurance premiums go up, this will go up a little bit. So the total PITI may change a little bit every year, but only based on changes in taxes and insurance. The P&I is fixed with a certain interest rate and a certain principal portion of the payment sufficient to amortize the loan over whatever the term is. Amortize meaning pay it all the way down to zero. Okay, that's a fixed rate mortgage. Now, there's an adjustable rate mortgage. These are called ARMs, ARMs. What do you think an adjustable rate mortgage is? The rate gets adjusted, right? Interest rate gets adjusted periodically, usually yearly. Under the loan we look at here, daily maybe. But the interest rate is adjustable. Now the materials talk about, you really don't need to know this, because an adjustable rate mortgage can be set up 100 different ways based on how's it going to adjust, how often is it going to adjust, what's going to be the index, what's going to be the margin you add on top of the index, how often are we going to adjust it. An adjustable rate mortgage is, and they talk about their, in residential lending, the rate can only go up this amount. There's a cap per year, and then there's a cap per life of loan, how much the rate can, those are just terms. An adjustable rate mortgage will not have a fixed P&I payment because the rate's going to change. And maybe every year they'll readjust your P&I so that so that the new adjusted payment will fully amortize your loan over the remaining term of whatever you have left. Because if they adjust it 2 years in, you've only got 13 years left. So you plug the numbers in a little program, and it comes out and says, look, the new higher interest rate, your payment has to go up to this to get rid of the loan in 13 years remaining of your 15. Okay, adjustable rate mortgage. There's a balloon mortgage. A balloon mortgage is simply, there's a big fat balloon payment at the back end. It balloons. Yes, sir.
Is that like the interest-only mortgage where the payments do at the end, or is that like a different?
Interestingly, an interest-only mortgage is not a balloon mortgage. Okay. But it looks just like a balloon mortgage.
Yeah, okay.
It's an exception to the balloon mortgage statute,
okay.
And it's also an exception to the definition.
Okay.
But it looks just like it, and if you're the borrower, it might as well be, because you're facing a big fat payment out there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and that's what this is all about. There's a big balloon payment at the back end. What this could be is any number of several different things. But this could be all these same things set up on a 25-year amortization, but with a 5-year balloon. Okay? Meaning, at the end of 5 years, whatever's due, whatever's left is due now. That's all it means. And there's a dozen different ways you can get into that mess of having a balloon. Whether you paid only interest, whether you paid no interest and just let it all accrue, whether you paid a little bit of principal every year, whatever the borrower will let you do, and whatever the lender will let you do in terms of your loan terms, so that you're not reducing it down to zero. In all these cases, the idea was to get down to a zero balance at the end of the loan term. But clearly, if you have a balloon, that means somewhere before this fully amortized term, it all came due. A balloon. Interest only looks like a balloon, but it's not, but it's all the same thing. In Florida, we got the most interesting definition. And Florida statute says any payment where the final payment is more than double the amount of the regular monthly payments is a balloon. Wow. That means if you had a 30-year mortgage and at year 29 and a half it was due, hell, that's a balloon under Florida law. You know, because you're going to have probably a little more than 2 payments left. That's a balloon, okay? But we got a couple of exceptions. And interest only is an exception. Any purchase money mortgage back to a seller in Florida, no matter what the terms are, is exempt from our balloon mortgage statute. Here's what our balloon mortgage statute does. Our balloon mortgage statute merely requires that in the mortgage document we look at, and the note, that right above the borrower's signature there be this huge legend in a certain size type, big type, bold, you know, bold character, whatever they define it as, that says this is a balloon mortgage. And on such and such a date, you're going to owe, notwithstanding what the term, what you may think the term is. Okay, Florida says if it meets our statutory definition of a balloon mortgage, that legend has to be in there. If that legend isn't in there, this is a hoot, the balloon goes away. That means the borrower just gets to keep making that payment for whatever the term is. That means, but see, and that's why it doesn't apply to an interest-only mortgage. Because then the borrower would never have to repay the principal. Okay. But it means if you had some of these partial payments here, if you had a 15-year amortizing with a 5-year balloon, that just means that you get to keep paying for 15. The balloon dies.
Okay.
That's all. And it's Florida is strictly a disclosure thing. Make sure the guy understood that if he thought this payment worked out for 15 years, make sure he understood, yeah, but at 5 years you're going to owe the whole thing. That's all it is. Okay, that's a balloon mortgage. It all comes to it. Reverse annuity mortgage. This is the thing you see on TV. You know Senator Fred Thompson? You know, he was Buford Pusser and Standing Tall or something, and he became the state senator from Tennessee. Tells you a lot about Tennessee. He gets on TV and talks about this reverse annuity mortgage for mom and dad to get the equity back out of their house. What that is you go into, you got to be more than 62 to qualify for one of these. And it's got to be a first mortgage, meaning you're old folks and you paid off your loan on your house, and you own it free and clear, and there's no mortgage. You don't have to write this down, this is what it is. And every month, the lender's going to write you a check. You don't make payments. Most loans, you make payments to the lender. These loans, lender makes payments to you.
But their property's paid off.
Well, but you just put a reverse annuity mortgage on there. What I'm saying is, it's got to be a first. Got to have no other mortgages on there. But every month, the lender loan writes you a check for $1,000. Well, then your balance is $1,000. Next month, your balance is $2,000, $3,000, $7,000, $12,000. So that it's a way that you're borrowing from the bank monthly and adding it to the debt, but never having to make payments. And at the end, when you're both dead, however many months you've both been getting $1,000, that's what's due. Your heirs inherit the property with $72,000 of debt on it. Because for 72 months, the lender wrote checks and interest. 60 months, now $72,000 with all the interest added on. The point is, it's called a reverse annuity. An annuity is, you know, when you get money monthly from an insurance company or something. It's a mortgage debt on unencumbered property, meaning no other first mortgage, no second mortgage, no nothing, where the proceeds are drawn out every month. And you don't make any payments. Okay. What
if the property has a first first mortgage, but, you know, say it's worth 800,000, you have 700,000.
They just, as I understand the terms of reducing, I've never actually done one or read one or signed one. I understand they will only make first mortgages, because it is sort of it's not exactly a government insured program, but it's a government,
I mean, I guess the reverse annuity could buy out the 100,000 and then pay that, continue to pay. And just
I think it's conceptual.
Yeah.
Conceptually,
They could just
conceptually you
take out the other
conceptually you could do it right here,
Right.
theoretically.
They could take
It's
it out.
just that I understand they don't. I understand they want a first position because their lien is going to grow and grow and grow.
But
and
they
grow.
could do a takeout loan of the first position mortgage
But
and become the first mortgage.
in order for them to refinance the first mortgage, though, in this case, that lender would have to pay $500,000 to this guy to get into first position.
But if there's more than 500,000 in equity, so that for them.
Of course, theoretically
Then
that's
it's
fine.
It has to be-
Theoretically, that's fine. It's just that, as I understand this government program, they don't do it. They only will do a first mortgage.
Hmm.
That's, theoretically, sure you could. What you gotta understand though, which has nothing to do with reverse annuity mortgages, but you need to understand that the thoughts that you have of, let's assume that everything is good and everything's getting paid in our factual scenario. I forget what this was. Notice of Liz Pendants, okay. At this point, you decide to refinance the first mortgage, okay? And put on a new mortgage here. Let's say here you decide to put on a new mortgage here in 2014, a new mortgage to a new lender, okay? Because the rate's no good on this mortgage anymore. It's not as simple as this guy steps over into these shoes. This guy is getting his lien in 2014. These guys are ahead of him. There's no going out and borrowing $500,000 and taking out the first. You got to pay all these guys. You got to borrow $900,000 for sure, because you got to take care of all these guys that you're getting behind. Okay. There are ways to do what you're talking about. It requires 3 or 4 lawyers on all sides of this, and it can be done. These guys are going to raise bloody hell that you're trying to get in front of, but there are ways. There are ways that this lender can buy this mortgage and modify it and try to get himself in this position. But it's doable, and we do them. But it's usually you go into a bank to refinance, and not only are they putting a mortgage on in 2014 where they're behind all this stuff, they have to pay it off, but also usually they're taking a look at your credit. The IRS is breathing down your neck, and this guy's trying to take your property away too. So even if you were making your payments on your mortgage, your credit stinks now. And they're probably not going to make that mortgage to you, whether they can get in first position or not. But theoretically, it's possible, but most refinances are a brand new mortgage to a new lender that take effect as of whenever you do it. Meaning you got to clean up everything in front of you because this guy wants to be in first position. And it's in big commercial deals, you would take an assignment of this mortgage. This lender would step in and buy this mortgage and then would modify it and change its terms and stuff like that, theoretically get in front of these people. But then we're going to talk about some terms this afternoon called a novation and an accord and these things. And these guys are going to try to claim, no, that was a new loan and he's after us really. So it's not easy to do. Okay, now, but as to a reverse annuity mortgage, simply it's for old people with have a first mortgage position available. Age 62, they draw what they're saying is you're drawing out your equity every month. Rather than selling a house to get your equity out of it, but then where am I going to live? But you're out of money. Old folks are out of money. Social Security isn't enough. Need another $1,000 a month. Put a reverse annuity mortgage on your house that's free and clear. Bank will send you $1,000 a month. Your heirs get it later. They got to pay it off. Or sell it. Whatever. Okay. Subprime mortgages. to talk a little bit about a subprime mortgage, merely because they cause the big, possibly cause the recession, but subprime mortgages are mortgages made at a higher than prime rate. Subprime sounds like, and less than prime, but it's the other way. It's subprime, meaning it ain't as good as prime. They're made at a high interest rate because they are high risk. Those are what put us into the recession in 2007 in housing. Was loans made to people who couldn't afford them at higher rates. They're risky loans. They went under, you know, the mortgage-backed bonds and all the crud that worked at that. But those were a subprime loan is a riskier loan with a higher rate to compensate for it. Now, two more, really, three things. There are, we're going to talk about now, three types of insurance on loans. When a lender makes a risky loan, there are different types of insurance to protect a lender in the event a default occurs, to protect a lender against taking a loss on the sale of the collateral. These are residential matters we're talking about. These are not commercial matters like this. These are residential loans. There are three types of guarantees available, and they guarantee different parts of the loan. What they're saying is, basically, Mr. Lender, make this risky loan, and if you suffer a loss on the collateral as a result of this risky loan, we, the insurance company, will help take care of it. The first, and one of the biggest of these, is a veterans loan. Veterans Administration, a VA loan. A VA loan is guaranteed by the Veterans Administration on loans made to eligible veterans, which merely means that if the lender makes a loan and suffers a loss, the VA will repay for it. So the loans are much more secure because a lender can't suffer a loss. The VA is going to write him a check. Pretty damn secure loan.
Is that an insurance or is that a guarantee?
I'm sorry?
Is that an insurance or a guarantor?
No, that's insurance. The VA program is partially, in other words, they insure a portion of the loan. And I say write them a check. I understand it's up to 30 or 40% of the balance or something for the lender. Each of these things is a different percentage of the loan that they'll insure, but it's always the top percentage. So that's where the lender's going to take the hit. You know, if he's not going to lose everything. He might lose 10, 20, 30%. That's what we're guaranteeing here. The second huge guarantor loan program is FHA loans. Federal Housing Administration, that's HUD, guarantees loans to people who qualify under certain FHA programs. These are low-income loans, people with low income, and most particularly, both in the case of VA loans and in FHA loans, they require a very small down payment. They finance huge percentages of loan to value. We haven't talked about that yet. Loan to value is basically the percent. This was a wonderful loan to value loan for the lender. 50%. He's loaning 50% of the value of the property. Now, he required appraisals to make sure that it was really worth $1 million. But hell, even if it was only worth $900,000, it's still a great loan to value loan. When a loan starts going past 75 or 80% of loan to value, it starts getting risky. That's the gold standard was 80. Today it's now 75 after the crisis. But once a loan gets risky, at a higher loan to value, higher percentage loan of value, the greater the chance that when it's finally sold in a foreclosure, that the lender's going to suffer a loss, and it's those higher portions that these loan programs are guaranteeing, yes, sir.
That's not true. I've been reading a lot in the papers that the loan to value right now, especially for higher priced properties, is actually 85.
For commercial?
No, for residential and
What type, what type of
high-end
lenders are you talking about?
loans, but high-end loans.
Yeah, those are
A
called
lot of
jumbos,
times-
those are called jumbo.
Right,
Yeah,
and a
and
lot of
the
those are-
jumbo changes,
a lot
it
of
used
the
to be
banks are
300,000.
releasing-
Yeah, it used to be
Or lending.
300,000, it's up to like 600,000 now, as I understand, if you're over that, you're a jumbo. And you're saying, well, no, because we haven't talked about the third
They're
type of
allowing
insurance
more
yet.
people, they're allowing people to go below the 20% threshold now.
Okay,
Banks are.
let me talk to you,
being
let me,
risky.
bear with me this, on the third type of insurance that we're talking about. And it may or may not apply in the type of loans you're talking about. The third type of insurance is called private mortgage insurance, PMI. PMI is the lender says to you, the borrower, this is a risky loan. I'm willing to make you the loan. But every month, you're gonna have to pay an insurance policy that guarantees me, the lender, that if you default, I'm gonna get paid a certain risky portion. Now, that is a third-party insurance company, private, PMI, private mortgage insurance. And what they will do is, for example, if the bank's policy is to require PMI on all loans above 75%, and the bank can set any policy they want. They can set 85%, they can set 60% if they want. A bank can say to you, we think there's enough risk in your loan, notwithstanding loan-to-value ratio. Maybe we just think your loan's risky anyway because you default once, you know? We want private mortgage insurance. That means you, monthly, the borrower, will make payments in addition to P&I and T&I. You will make PMI payments monthly to a lender, to a separate insurance company, private, that will insure the bank against a loss on default, and until, perhaps in a lot of these cases, you have paid the loan down to a certain loan-to-value ratio. Traditionally, if you went above 80%, the bank required PMI until you had paid the balance down to 78%. And that's what the golden standard has always been. 80% loan, no PMI. 83% loan to value, get PMI until you've reduced the balance with your P partial payments down to 78% of loan to value. Private.
How does that work if, I mean, presumably your home's value doesn't stay level during that time? So in a situation where the value increases such that, you know, before I reach 78% of the original appraised value.
Maybe inflation helped me out of it.
So
I don't know whether you get, I honestly don't know whether they allow you to get an appraisal to show them I'm already at 78% because the value doubled.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know whether I can, because it's residential and I
Yeah.
just don't know.
Mhm.
You know, they don't have this in private loans, and in commercial loans,
Sure.
that's right.
Right.
I think it's 78% of the original appraised value on the loan. Because it could go just the other way around too.
Yeah.
You know, value may have gone down. And you'd be a lot happier as a borrower if it went away at 78% of my original appraisal,
Yeah, true.
if the value is down now.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's a reappraisal, I think it's the original,
Sure.
the original appraisal done at the time the loan was made. Anyway, those are different types of mortgage insurance, private or by the VA or the FHA. So they're not, they call them types of loans. They call it even a PMI loan. Just a loan that has something else you gotta pay for every month. Or the VA or the FHA, and really you don't pay them monthly for their guarantee. They do it for you because you're a veteran, or they do it for you because the government subsidizes it through HUD. Now, I think we're gonna quit, it's 12:30. We've got a couple more things to talk about in mortgages, and then we've got another chapter. But let's go ahead and take our lunch break, and then we'll try to zip through the rest of it.
Would you give me a question?
Hey, I passed the class, that's all I
I gotta be honest with us.
Did you really?
I got 96 on the
Yeah.
final exam with
Did you?
the 2020.
Dude, you must have been somebody impressive.
I guess I did, I have to do my own math.
No, you
It
sent
is.
me my, oh, no, you're right, you didn't send mine.
Cause I went on a black
No,
board and I
the
saw
up,
the
you
grades.
can calculate your grade.
Yeah.
Yes, I calculated.
No, yeah, that's what I had to do.
I got A minus. I got like I got
If I
96.
get a B minus, I'm gonna be really.
I got 96 in the final because of you guys. I got 76 and I got 20 points.
Okay, listen to that.
Yeah, I got the same thing, I had a 73 in the final, but with a,
All that you care about.
oh, wait a minute, with a 20 point, like I actually have more points than are possible in the final, right? Oh, it's a 50 point possible, I got 39 points, you add 20.
I got this. Cause I needed
It's
to,
like-
I needed to kick in
It's
by
like
the time I
super
got home.
Cuban colada, like, yeah, that wasn't a good idea. But,
It does help you study, but then after a while.
I don't take that role, but
do
I'm
you know
assuming
this
that
is,
it's a very.
comprehensive, like the whole,
Yeah, that's what you said, right?
nobody knows. People,
No, I
some,
said, yeah, I said yes, it
you
is.
said yes.
But it's
and
gonna
then-
be focused towards the second semester, I think.
I didn't read my notes. He didn't even know.
It was last week, he said that.
Oh. Okay, so I didn't bring my notes for last,
I saw that as soon as you didn't have it up, so I'm like,
How's the
no, I
kid
printed
doing?
everything, but I
Good.
don't have
He's good.
Cute
the
as ever.
first, the midterm stuff.
Unexpected.
Printed now.
yeah.
No.
I don't
Surprises.
have computers in my backwards and
Not
there's
yet.
so much going on.
Plenty of time for
Are you the one who said $1,000 a month?
What?
Or what was it, like a
Boogers.
budget issue? You're like,
For
there's
what?
like a, for having a kid or something like that? Plan on.
You know.
He said, I think he said something like that one time, I was.
Just a hospital bill.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Let's see, once we finally got all our bills and totaled them all up,
Ready to give me.
I know.
They're low about it.
it's probably
Yeah,
$10,000 to have a kid.
I mean, I just
Yeah, wow.
That's deductibles, right?
Yeah, that's out of my pocket.
Yeah.
If we had just, paid full price, no insurance, no insurance, negotiated deductions and stuff like that, it'd have been 50 grand.
So I need to sign back up for the army before I have.
If I were smarter, have all of your children in the military, $0 out of pocket.
They told her about 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although my insurance does cover all the healthy baby appointments, so we've had 0 out of pocket pediatrician costs.
Yeah.
$10,000, but it's not $10,000.
That's what I
I
had
could
to
buy a small car for that, man.
Yeah.
And you're not even past the 1 year mark, right?
Get a boat, 4 months, man.
I think I would.
I remember
Let's,
comprehensive, the
Let's go
first
ahead
part
and
is not.
sell the engagement ring. You don't need that anymore, you got the kid.
No, it's very important. I don't know when I first.
But see, medical bills can't go against your credit, which is
As
nice.
long as I don't fail construction, I think,
Been fighting with insurance companies for
like you
years.
said, these just great.
I'm looking to make sure that I got a B. Because I don't know.
I do my math. What would be? It's between a B and a B.
I'm between a B minus
A B minus
do it
and a B.
again.
A B minus and a B.
Anybody
Chad, this is
gearing up for fantasy?
I'm fully.
my entire, all the guys and the attorneys at my law firm
What,
were crazy.
what's the sleeper pick this year?
Ryan Tannerhill.
Think so?
Yeah,
Tannehill.
Tannerhill. If you look last year, he was a top 10 quarterback.
He looked great preseason.
I know,
That first
I know.
game.
He's the sleeper.
But he's got a whole new receiving corps.
That's really that I work
Nobody's
with one
working
last.
with.
That's great though, because everyone else used to suck at it, he used to
I
have.
did. I'm not gonna lie to you. When Brian Hartline is one of your top receivers,
No, you
Because
can
of the issues over here with the offense. yeah.
I think you guys have done the right thing. I don't know. I mean, Greg Jennings is still a top
Okay,
tier
this is what I
receiver
did.
in my opinion.
This is
He's,
35%,
he's gonna be
this is
slower, but he
54%,
still knows how
So
to
you
play
add
the
this
game.
to
Yeah, I mean, fantasy is mostly luck, just not getting
And then add
hurt.
to this.
The biggest thing is like if you can get your top 5.
That's how I'm asking if you get any sleep.
Oh, yeah.
I think-
it's because of the
I
waiting.
think Kelvin Benjamin is gonna have to break out your best. Everybody kind of knows that. So I'm not considering
That's,
that.
kind of what I.
I mean, I got third last year and second the year before I advanced the league. I usually pick Marshawn Lynch as like my running back in the first
Yeah.
round. But in the past like 3 years, I've done that. But then after that, I kind of just see who's available. Rather than trying to plan it out too much. But 3 years ago, I did have Marshawn.
Yeah, but you always gotta have like a sleeper in the late rounds.
Yeah, I know that, but
Everybody
I
else
ended up with Marshawn, Payton, and Marius Thomas in the first 3 picks. And that was
Chad,
before
I ate the
Payton,
whole
was-
thing.
Payton came back.
Yeah, yeah.
And the first night,
Oh,
of
he's
Thursday
killer.
night football, I scored 96 points.
Got
with
my
2
diet.
people.
Wow.
It was Peyton Manning massacre.
It was.
I have to look more for the sleepers, but it's. I think I have like a
But give her
contraction
some,
in
give
2
her some
weeks.
almond milk. I told you this morning. Yes. You know what the bad
Yeah, go what the baby eats.
He said, don't put my mom right.
Okay, I got a 86%.
That you're not gonna.
Wait, let me give you mine.
I'm just, okay, so
Who's the
give
top
her some of
runner
that
this year?
and, we should.
Oh,
be
you
back
talking
on
about
the
the
Yeah,
green?
so it's,
I don't
it's,
know.
Give her some of
it's
that
just a
and
weighted
we'll
average, the score.
Sure,
and-
Marshall.
Oh, he's
But don't give it to
Mhm.
Nicole, they should have left it out.
98
what is it?
and, no, wait,
And I
the midterm?
think
He
I
was
need
up
some
there.
chicken.
No, 83.
He had a slow
You
start.
got 83 on the midterm?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's
I'll probably
consistent.
pick a Tom Brady late because he's suspended the first 4 games.
That's there's no way. So people are gonna take
No, I think
him.
so. You're
After the-
He won't-
suspended.
He won't. Yeah, he won't. He'll drop out of the first round.
That's what's on.
Oh no, I mean, our league's quarterbacks are sitting forever.
For real.